Now we're to the kennel portion training of this program. It is very important as part of this program for dogs to have a safe place to relax and meditate. The Bible says we should meditate on the Word of God. It's like going into your secret place, with the Father, to pray, communicate with, Jesus and God, and pray and, speak to them. And so I'm just going to show you. Bianca is kennel trained, so this is what it should look like. Bianca sit, Bianca down, and my dogs are on e-collars here. And so everything that we've trained outside of the kennel, we transfer into the kennel. And that's what it should look like. Barry is a perfect, wonderful example of, a dog being very calm and compliant in the kennel. Bianca is younger, and so they are a good example of what it should look like to be calm. Barry's older, so he's done this longer. And Polly's very new at this. So this is a threshold. So before she comes out, this is very important when you're going outside, out doorways, car doors, kennel doors. This is very important. This is a threshold. And so the dog should not be pushing out the threshold before they come out. They should be waiting for you. So Polly sit. Technically, they should be sitting, but she's not going to give me a sit. That's okay. Well, there she goes. And so I'm just going to show you what it looks like when you're first, conditioning a dog to the kennel. And so the slip lead goes on, and technically you want them to be backed up. You don't want them coming out of the kennel before you tell them. And so I just gave her a little bit of spatial pressure there. I could also give her a kennel door. So Polly, come. We'll go over that more. When we are first starting kenneling training, it's okay to use treats. Again, you will phase out the treats. My dogs don't get treats every time they go in the kennel, but a lot of times they do. And so it's okay to start conditioning with that. Probably sit. And so I don't want the dogs rushing in the kennel, so they're on leash. A slip lead I'm using to communicate and to walk her through this exercise. So I'm going to give her the command. So Polly, kennel. I'm going to take my hand and guide her into the kennel. Remember, I don't want her coming back out. I can give her a treat as long as she stays in the kennel. We've patterned this so much outside of the kennel that we're now transferring it in the kennel, and she's understanding that. So Polly, come. So it's important, just like the place command that we teach, Polly, sit, that you call the dogs out of the kennel, you call them off of place. And so place command is a mental kennel, right? This is actual physical kennel. And so, but it's very, very important that dogs get conditioned to this when they first go into a home. And so a lot of dogs that are not kennel trained get themselves into a lot of trouble when they are tearing things up. They can't handle that amount of freedom, and so it's important to create a positive association with this. So Polly was left in a kennel quite a bit. Polly, kennel. And so she was nervous. Polly, sit. I'm giving her a little leash pressure up to be left in a kennel. So you'll notice I just gave her a little leash pressure up. I'm going to do it again and demonstrate putting the leash through the kennel bars. I like these kennels, the wire kennels, because they're open and the dogs don't feel so confined in them. So Polly, come. All right, and so I just need her to be patient right here. Polly, kennel, guiding her in. And then again, leash pressure up here. So if you need to, you can slip the leash through the top of the kennel to get a sit, okay? And then you would basically give the dog, the leash is kind of twisted here. So I'm just going to twist it behind her head. You would give the dog leash pressure up here. And so you could kind of see, you would stop them, from bolting out of the kennel. Because they need to understand the door isn't keeping them in there. These bars aren't keeping them in there. Them being obedient and respectful to you is keeping them in there. All right, so Polly, come. Polly, kennel. Polly, sit. Good girl. So she's getting it step by step, and you don't want to move to the next step until the dog is being obedient on that step, until they're in a good, peaceful state. And so once we're compliant with the little things that God asks us to do, then he's going to give us more and more and more. And so it just starts to feel better and better and better on your walk. So Polly, come. She's ready to go into a down. So again, we're just stacking on all the commands that we've done now outside of the kennel. We're transferring in the kennel. So Polly, kennel. Polly, sit. I would like the dog backed off the door quite a bit, and then I'm going to reposition my body. I'm going to put my foot in the kennel, and I'm going to point down, because we've trained the down outside the kennel before we put him in the kennel. And so, and it's a lot of times, it's important to use your foot, because a lot of times the dogs will, you know, try to, you know, mouth your hand, or they think you're going to pet them, and it's just, you know, engagement that we don't want. And so now she's into relax. Remember, we've done this outside of the kennel many times before we transfer it in the kennel, and she's feeling very good about it. She's given us a hip roll, and she's telling us that she's ready to move to the next step. So do it as many times as you need to with the dog. And I'm also creating a positive association by giving her treats. And so, you know, Barry's asleep, and so you can also see with him that, I'll give you a treat too. Barry wants a treat. And you can see how when they get to a place of peace with this, that's how it should feel. It should feel good to them. It shouldn't feel scary, you know. And we recommend not leaving dogs longer than 4 hours. I mean, there are people that work away from home that kennel their dogs for 8 hours, but that gets to be long. And also you want to make sure the dog doesn't have physical issues, you know. So as the dogs start to age, they can get more time out of the kennel. So Barry will spend more time out of the kennel now that he's earned that. He's 11 years old. Marco has physical issues, so he can't spend a long time in the kennel, but they've earned that. The young dogs that can spend time in the kennel, it's very good for them. Now she's putting her head out the threshold here, and that's okay. I'm going to back her off of it in a minute. Polly, come. But she's getting relaxed at each step, each stage, and so we're just moving along. Polly, kennel. Polly, sit. Good girl. Polly, down, and hopefully this time she's going to be backed off that door a little bit. So there she goes, backed up. Good job. Now I'm going to drop the leash. And dogs also tend to panic when you shut the door. So I'm leaving the leash under here, and this is for demo purposes only and training purposes. Never leave the leash on your dog and leave them unattended like that. They could choke. It's very dangerous. So this is just for training purposes. If she were to pop up, I could put my foot on the leash to get her to lay back down. And so as soon as you shut the door, give your dog a treat, because that tells them like that, you know, it's okay, don't panic. You're conditioning them with something positive, which with something scary, because kenneling might be scary for some dogs. Polly was left in the kennel for long periods of time, so she was nervous about being left. And so it's important to take your time, condition this, and kennel training, oh, I dropped him for Barry there. Kennel training can only be done when you're home. So the real test is when you leave your dog. So, you know, we highly recommend cameras. You know, they sell those nowadays, and it's just really handy to have on your dogs when they're first learning training. So she can still obviously sit up with that as, you know, through the door. But if she can't lay back down, then again, I would just give her pressure to lay back down. Or if she's getting nervous about something, give her pressure to lay back down. You need to be careful that you don't leave this on the dog too long, because they will start to chew the leash. So Polly, sit. So now she gets distracted. Polly, down, and needs a little bit more help with that. Now, again, you can see that my dogs have e-collars on. And so as you move through the program, you can progress to other tools. But right now we're starting on a slip lead. And so people can train this on a training collar as well. We've got a hip roll. That means she's feeling good about it. And so that means we can move to the next step of removing the leash. But it's very important that people understand that this has to be done step by step, and that you don't leave the dog in a kennel and before they're ready. So we highly recommend doing this when you have time at home, you know, on a weekend or when you're home from work, to help them practice this. And so, and if you have other dogs that are kennel trained, it's very important that you use them as teacher dogs. And kenneling your dogs together is the best thing. When people separate their dogs, it's really can be hard on them. Or if one dog is left out, you know, and the other dogs will tend to be confused about why that dog gets freedom. Now these dogs have been trained that Barry, you know, he's older, and so he gets left out, and then those two are kenneled. So at least Polly has another example of another dog being kenneled when Barry has time out. Okay, so now we're going to remove the leash. She's doing wonderful, showing us that she's relaxed. And when I go to get her out, remember, she's not to be pushing this. And so she's waiting patiently, right? Because the door does not, no, Polly, stay. The door does not keep her in there, right? Her obedience to us, her, good girl, wanting to be compliant, that's what keeps her in there, not the door, because dogs break out of these kennels very easily, and they make, 20 gauge reinforced steel kennels. I have clients that have all kinds of kennels, but I've had dogs ripping teeth out of their head, breaking teeth to get out of kennels and a steel kennel. And so it's very important that you teach the dog how to deal with this, not just increase the size of the kennel or the power of the kennel. Now you can put zip ties on your kennel, you can put carabiners, you can put other things to help the dog not get out, because once the dog escapes, then they know a way out. And so, but you got to be careful because they can injure themselves. So my point being, it's important that we give the dogs the skills to be able to do it. If you just put a dog in a kennel and don't give them the mental ability, you don't give them the tools to be able to deal with it, then you're putting them in a dangerous situation. So now I'm going to grab the leash. Polly, come. Now she likes being in the kennel because that's where I've given her treats. And so, good girl. So now, this time when I go to put her in the kennel, I'm going to take off the leash when she's in. So this is how I recommend getting dogs in and out of the kennel when you're in the program. And so, Polly, kennel, little girl, sit. So I'm kneeling down, slipping the leash off. I can even give her a down while I'm in here. Polly, down. I can do that with the leash on or off. And now the leash is off of her. Give her a reward. Barry doesn't want his treats anymore. So now, again, and if I was adding distractions just like we did on the place command, adding distance, duration, distraction, it might be helpful to keep the leash on in case she were to get up. But now, it's important that your dog is conditioned to you moving around the room, moving around your house, and watching you from there to make sure that your dog has the mental ability to do this before you actually leave the house. And so there she got up. Polly, down. You can give her the command to get back down. And again, that's why we progress to other tools in terms of an e-collar if a dog is barking. All this stuff will be available on our online store, but people do use bark collars, but those should only be used for a short amount of time and only in a kennel, because otherwise you're not getting to the root of the problem. We don't want to be chasing problems. We want to get to the root of the issue, which is their peaceful state, right? It's their mental, where is their mind at? Where's their heart at? What are they feeling? And so you've got to change the way they feel about the world in order to get the behavior that you want. And so kennel training is a very important part of life, and it's a very important part of this plan. So we highly encourage you to train your dogs in a kennel.